Hello, my honeybees. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here with Sweet Like Honey Coaching. My name is Kimberly Hess. I am the founder of this amazing advising, coaching, and consulting firm. I really just want people to live their best lives ever. I don't think that's too much to ask. Is it too much to ask? Welcome. If this is your first time here, my name is Kimberly Hess. I am a cultural anthropologist. And like I said, I am the founder and head empowerment coach here at Sweet Like Honey Coaching. And once again, like I said, if you're new here, I am all about people living their best lives. As a cultural anthropologist, I am fascinated by human behavior and how human behavior changes and why we are who we are because of the culture that we have grown up in, that we have been taught, that has been indoctrinated into us. And so I look at life through a very cultural and critical lens. Um, it's very interesting. People are like, you almost have two sides of you because I'm very woo woo and spiritual and upbeat and rose colored glasses, Pollyanna. And then on the other side, I am very logical, very analytical. Like, why is this working like this? Why is she doing what she's doing? Why did he say that? Why, is our government doing what it's doing? Like everything is culture. I say culture is everywhere. Culture is our politics, it's our music, it's what we find entertaining. And once you start looking at the culture that surrounds a person, the culture that surrounds a people, the culture that surrounds a country or a nation or a religion, it's kind of like a door opening, right? It just cracks open what was invisible and it makes it very visible. But once again, first, one has to understand how culture plays a part in who we are, right? And not even just the culture of our family, right? Like if you're raised by your mother or your father or grandparents or adults, like the people raising you really determined your culture and your beliefs, and the society and the world around them developed those beliefs for them, right? So when I am interested in getting to know someone deeper, let's say a coaching client comes to me and they say I'm unlovable, right? First I want to sit and hear the story, like the problem. I have a framework that I usually go by, and first it's what's the story, right? And then I'm sorry, what's the problem, and then what's the story, and then what is the best case scenario solution, which could be anything. So if a client comes to me and says I'm unlovable, and um my brain is going like five different directions because I was going to tell everyone there is a link for everyone on LinkedIn, where if you would like some free coaching right now, right? And this is what I'll go through with you. First, we'll talk about what is the issue, right? What is the story behind that issue? And then what is in your mind, what would be the perfect resolution for you, right? And so I was saying, please join in TikTok. I am not sure how. Okay, I'm not sure how I can have you invited because I'm not on my phone. Um, when I'll do some TikTok lives just for online coaching for TikTok. So if a client comes to me, and actually a client did say this to me once, I am unlovable, right? So that is the problem. That's the issue, is that this client felt unlovable. And then we would talk about the story behind that. I would ask you, why do you feel unlovable? You could say, my father worked all the time and didn't love me. My mom had a high powered career and never baked me cookies. I had very loving parents, but the kids at school bullied me. It could be a myriad of things of why someone doesn't feel loved. Or I felt very loved until, my heart got broken at 25. So that is the story behind that. And then I would ask the client, you, what would be if all things were perfect and if I had a magic wand, right? What would be the resolution? What would be the best possible case scenario to resolve the issue, which is I'm unlovable? And then the client would say what they would say. Maybe perhaps I'd get married, or I could fall deeply in love with myself. We as humans usually don't think that that's the problem for being unlovable. But it is. It is. We'll talk about that in a second. It could be anything. I could start dating again. Um, and that's kind of the process that I walk people through, as far as how your culture, right? And culture it could be a very nuanced thing, right? It could be a very large, all encompassing thing. So, how does culture play a part in not only who you are, but where you are in your life today, as far as your successes, your failures? And I'm just like a born motivational speaker, which I just say I'm like the cheerleader of the world. I I was a cheerleader, and that was like my best activity ever. I freaking love being a cheerleader. Like you get to wear a cute outfit and yell on the sidelines with sparkly pom poms. Like that job as an adult. I guess this is my job as an adult, right? Just minus the pom poms. Maybe I should get some. If anyone would like to gift me pom poms, please do. Make them as sparkly as possible. So, like I said, I am definitely the cheerleader of the world, the cheerleader of my family. When people need some support and some motivation, they come to me. I think this is why a lot of people in the work world come to me, because we all need some motivation. We all need some empowerment. I was going to have a topic today, and I said no, let me just see what happens, because I don't want to have a topic every day, because I really want to get into the habit of people coming on and being coached impromptu, right? And yes, could I invite people and have my friends do it? Yes, but I want people that haven't had a chance to experience me hyping them up, empowering them. Let me say, for someone to tell you that you can do anything in this world and it's up to you is something that we very rarely hear. When we're kids, we hear you can do whatever you want to do. If you want to be an astronaut, you can. If you want to be president of the United States, you can. If you want to be a doctor, you can, right? So when we're young, for most of us, we hear this amazing encouragement that we can be, do, and have whatever we want, right? As we get older, that encouragement wanes, and the encouragement and the empowerment um, takes the place of the place of encouragement and empowerment is practicality. Have you ever heard this? Let's be realistic. So, for example, I have two sons, which you will always hear me talk about. They're pretty amazing people. So, my oldest son is in the military. It's very logical, straight up job, right? When I tell people what my son does, they're like, "Oh my goodness, that's amazing! Wow, he's got a bright future ahead of him," which he does, right? And he's worked very hard to be where he is. My youngest son is an artist. So my oldest son is like a chemist, like a nuclear chemist. I don't really know what he does, but he's brilliant. So he's a nuclear chemist. So my oldest son is very science, very logical, loves numbers. Like I said, he's in the Navy. He's high up there. I don't know what he does, but he's amazing, right? That's my oldest son. My youngest son, which is 2.5 years younger than his older brother, is an artist, an artist in every sense of the word. Right, he is an artiste, right? As far as music and dance and poetry, he's a rapper, he's an MC and a DJ, like an electronic DJ, and he has all of these cool events like raves in the woods, or he'll be like, yeah mommy, I had a set at like 4 from 4 to 6 in the morning, and I'm like, oh my god. Anyway, as I am telling you the joy, as I relate to you who my sons are and what their passions are, what they how their brains work, when other people ask me about my sons, I say what I said. First one's science number, second one is an artist. And my second son recently just graduated with a BA in fine arts, dance. And so when I tell people that, they're like, huh, well, what's his backup plan? What's his backup plan? And I'm like, there is no backup plan. He's an artist, right? And as I think about that, how many times do we relegate, or maybe unintentionally and sometimes intentionally, put down the intellect, the artistry, the passion, the compassion, the love of people doing what they're doing, but because it doesn't fit into, in our minds, capital something in our capitalistic society that's going to not only just sustain your life, right, which we need, but to live, right? So if I tell someone that, let's say one of my kids is going to be a lawyer and the other one's going to be a sculptor, no one asked me about the lawyer kid. No one's going to be like, "Ooh, what's his backup plan for being a lawyer? Is he going to study art or dance?" It's never the other way around, right? And the reason it's not the other way around is because capitalism does not value us as the worker for anything that doesn't make someone of the higher class more money, right? So being a dancer per se isn't going to make someone of the higher class, let's say like the Walton family of Walmart, that's not going to make them more money. I really feel like the arts are something to be um, for maybe the leisure class, something to be enjoyed, something that's appreciated, but not something that the common working man or woman should aspire to. So when I tell people that my son is a musician and he's a dancer, in their mind, that is not as important as, now I'm not even going to say him paying his bills, just him living. And oftentimes, I'm asking my clients this, particularly women that are older. And when I say older, like 40 plus, 45 plus. And these women typically are very professional. Some may be wives and mothers, some aren't. But the one thing is that I hear often, and you've heard me say this myself, that you get to a certain point and you're like, I've done everything right, right? Got the education, I've worked hard, I've got the job, I've worked overtime, I did what I was supposed to do, I treated people kindly and with respect. And then you get to a certain point in your life and you're like, is this it? Is this it? I did on the show maybe a couple of weeks ago, you remember when I had to look up the life expectancy of people in the United States. And I think like the average was about 74. And it varies, right? I think like white women were like 80. Women lived a little longer than men. White people lived a little longer than uh, other people, others of us in the global majority, Black, Asian, Indian, Latino. But overall, 74 in the US is pretty average if you take this mixing pot of a world we have with different genders, different ethnicities, different cultures, different eating patterns, different zip codes. 74 was around the average. So once again, a lot of people might get to 40, 45, 50, 60, and they're like, okay, I got 20 more years, I got 15 more years, I got 10 more years, on average. If you live to be 80 and you're 50, you have 30 more years, but that's less time that you have going forward than is behind you. Because, they always say tomorrow's not promised. So even me sitting here as a 51-year-old woman being like, oh, 74 is the average age. What do they say? You could walk out tomorrow and get hit by a bus. I don't wish that on anyone. But that phrase is true. We could not be here tomorrow. And so, like I said, a lot of particularly women that I've talked to who have dedicated their lives to their careers, to other people, whether that be their children, their husbands, their partners, their families. You will always hear me say that women, we give so much of our energy, we give so much of our life force. And by the time you hit a certain age, and I always refer to this as the crone era, right? I'm a crone. There's maiden, mother, and then crone, right? And so once you get to the crone era and you have this wisdom about life and you've worked and you've done things that worked and you've done things that haven't worked and you've made decisions that were great for you and you've made decisions that weren't great for you. And as you start looking at your life and then looking at your future, I think a lot of us are like, what next? Do I want to continue on this path, right? And when I say this path, I'm talking specifically to women who are working corporate, but really anyone that's working any job. Being a mother is a job, being a good daughter, parent, spouse, girlfriend, wife, all of sibling, all of that is a job. So once you get to a certain age, you're like, okay, this was good, and hopefully it has been good for you. This was good. How can I make my life better? And I am saying all this because I have been growing and learning and purging and really critically thinking about not only myself, but the world I live in, the culture, and what the future could hold for myself as an individual, for myself as a business owner, for myself as someone that empowers people and is an intellectual and thinks critically. How can I contribute greatly to this culture? Right. And by greatly, I mean, for me, that is raising people's vibration. That is having people be happy, having people be joyous. Yesterday, we did the show about taking care of ourselves and what does that look like to take care of yourself. And I want to expand that to say, and really to ask you, what does it look like to take care of yourself, not just for today or for the week, but forever, right? Is that changing your diet? And y'all will always hear me talk about changing my diet because I desperately want to be I desperately want to be a vegetarian and go on a vegetarian diet. But y'all, I was born and raised in Ohio, just meat and potatoes. Like, you put a steak in front of me, ah, you give me pepperoni pizza, y'all, I meatloaf. My sister Michelle always makes fun of me because she says I love senior citizen meals. Open face pot roast with mashed potatoes and gravy over the pot roast sandwich and green beans. Y'all can't tell me nothing. Yes, I love senior citizen meals, and yes, I will eat it at 4 o'clock for the blue plate special. So I tell you my love of meat, right? I'm telling you this. I really want to be a vegetarian. And I want that because I know long term that will be taking care of myself, right? And the only reason that I would be, be a vegetarian is I'm going to be honest with y'all. I don't have the discipline. I don't have the discipline to be like, oh, I'm only going to eat meat on the weekends, or I'm only going to eat meat every quarter. No, I mean, maybe I could, but I just, I love meat. And it's interesting. I can go without eating meat for a couple of days, but if I'm like, no more meat ever. And then, of course, someone will come over with some chicken wings, and I'll be like, y'all, really? Really? Anyway, a bit of a tangent, but still on the topic of how can you take care of yourself long term, particularly those of us that are in menopause, right? Everything is changing. It was really interesting. Who was I talking about to the other day? And we were saying, like, there's just no, it's just interesting how it's just now being talked about menopause. And I was telling whoever I was talking with, I actually think it was like a nurse. I was saying, because, oh, no, it wasn't a nurse, it was someone else. But it was a woman though. And I was saying, because women's bodies and our health, whether mental, physical, and even spiritual, has not been a priority in this very patriarchal world, right? And when I say patriarchy, I just mean man controls and is centered at a culture or a society, right? So that's what kind of patriarchy means to me. And because patriarchy does not center women, does not center children, um, most things that are tested, at least in the past, most things that are tested have had typically white men in the center as far as size, weight. I had read a study once that said car seatbelts were the like crash test dummies were like modeled after men, right? So the same weight, maybe a little bit taller than women. So the seatbelt, was not taking into consideration a woman's body, right? A woman's weight, that women are built a little differently and sit differently in a car. And then also a lot of the pharmaceutical drugs that we take, the larger trials. This was a while ago. I hopefully it's better now. But a lot of the trials were done on men, right? So women's and people of color, our bodies, the way we metabolize things weren't taken into consideration. So absolutely, absolutely fascinating. So as I talk about women getting older, and you could be any age, but particularly for women getting older, I want you to start thinking about how you can take care of yourself long term. And to my younger women listening, let me tell you, as a woman 50 plus, there's so many things that I did not know or understand about my body, about my health, about my mental well-being, about my joy, about centering myself. What can you do today that is going to ensure that you take care of yourself for the rest of your life? And this isn't just physical, right? This could be financial. Like, let's talk about taking care of ourselves on a holistic level. What happens when you open up your checking and savings account and everything is perfectly accounted for, and you have the perfect amount of savings and the perfect amount going to your investments automatically? That is a form of taking care of yourself, right? Buying the what you think may be expensive walking shoes versus the cheap walking shoes that will give you shin splints and bruises, right? Because you're like, oh, I don't want to buy the more expensive pair of walking shoes. What I'm hearing is you saying, I'm not good enough for the good quality shoes that cost more money because of the good quality, which will treat my body better, right? So once again, let's work on not only taking care of ourselves in the moment, which we talked about yesterday, taking taking a bath, walking in nature, but let's also start thinking of long term things. I mentioned yesterday saying no to people, saying yes to you more, and saying no to others more, saying yes to others less, yes to you more. All right. And like I said, when I coach, I get people to see a different perspective that they're not able to see, whether that's around their team, whether that's around, a relationship that they have, whether that's around it. And let me tell you, I think this is probably it always comes back to this. People come to me with that issue or the problem being outside of them. And let me tell you, folks, as I'm talking to you, I'm talking to me. It always boils down to what's inside, right? Always, always, always comes back to us. And that's we could probably get into a pretty good show with just that. But always, just checking on the chat, always comes back to who you are inside, to who I am inside. So for example, if I'm not saying that this is right, but if someone calls me outside of my name, let's say someone calls me ugly, and if I am so offended, I can't believe they called me ugly. Who do they think they are? Do whoop-de whoop-de whoop. I could be upset and I could be justified for that. That was a very mean thing they said, calling me ugly, right? So on the other hand, if someone calls me ugly and I'm like, your opinion, hope you feel better sharing it, right? If I don't think I'm ugly, why would it impact me so much? So someone calling me ugly and I get upset and I'm like, "Oh my god, I can't believe this." That comes into it always comes back if we dig deep enough, and sometimes it's really right underneath the surface, to an internal issue within me, an internal issue within you. So going off of that example, if someone calls me a pink elephant, I'm like, they're like, "Kimberly, you are such a pink elephant. I hate pink elephants." I'm going to be like, "Are you crazy? Like, I'm not a pink elephant," right? Once again, going back with the ugly comment. If there is nothing inside of me that thinks being a pink elephant is wrong, I'm going to be like, "All right, okay, that's your opinion, right?" But if someone calls me ugly, if someone calls me a racial slur, if someone calls me a misogynistic slur or a misogynoir slur, that is going to impact me because in the past, it has been able to touch at a very soft, sensitive part within me that made me feel like I wasn't good enough. So if I hear certain words, certain sayings, or if I feel that someone doesn't like me or has something bad to say about me and I get offended, that means that that is touching a sore part in me that it would behoove me to sit in silence and look a little deeper into why I got so upset, why I got so angry, why I cried, or why that hurt me. Now, to do this, that's shadow work, and it takes a lot. It takes a lot to do it on your own, which is why I implore you to, get someone like me, um, get someone with a that focuses on decolonization of the mind. I think that's very important because a lot of therapists, a lot of coach will coach you internally, which is amazing. And oftentimes, a lot of coaches who this isn't their specialty don't know, can't even comprehend how outside society plays a role, particularly for women of color and for Black women. Sorry, just getting a phone call. So I'm just going to sit with that for a moment. So just think about how the world around you and the culture around you and the people around you have really defined who you are today. If you love who you are today, keep going, girl. Keep going. I like this. I like this. If you believe that there could be some changes for your betterment. Notice I didn't say improvements. I said changes, right? You might live in New York City and you're like, I really want to live on the beach in Florida. Maybe not Florida. I really want to live on the beach in Costa Rica, right? Like those kind of changes. You might love living in New York and maybe your nervous system needs a little bit calmer. Maybe you are a high-powered attorney that works 80 hours a week and you're like, I became an attorney because I thought this is what I had to do to be successful, and now it's time for me to do something else. It could be something as big as that. It could be something as, I'll say, small. I just small as and not as impactful, but not as life changing. Could be as something as I've started gardening. I try to garden every day for 30 minutes. And when I say garden, I mean pull weeds. I'm not really gardening. I'm not at that step yet, but I'm getting there. I'm getting there. So, like I said, something very small. I said 15 to 30 minutes a day, I'm going to pull weeds. I'm usually out there for a couple of hours, right? Once again, that is me taking care of myself, being out in nature, you know, talking to the plants, talking to the flowers, telling the weeds it's time to go. They get to rest. Yeah, I talk to the weeds and the plants, but it's nice. They're my friends now because the weeds don't want to be there anyway. They're tired. But something that will change your joy factor, something that will give you a little more happiness in life, right? Whether that's moving to the beach or moving to New York City or pulling weeds for 15 minutes a day. So let's start thinking about things that we can take care of ourselves on a daily basis, but also very long term, as far as our health, as far as our fitness, as far as our finances. Spirituality is a big one. Perhaps you're going to say, I'm going to communicate with my higher power every day when I wake up, or every day before I go to bed, or 5 times a day. I'm going to be grateful 5 times a day. Y'all know I like examples. I like examples because not just one example fits for everyone. So I have to give you 10. So we had no one come on to get some live coaching, but if you are listening and you want to be coached live, you don't have to turn your camera on. I usually have a link. If I don't have the link wherever you're watching this, just message me and I'll send you the link so I can invite you. But yes, I cannot wait to get everyone to come on live so we can start chatting. I am so excited to coach people live. And remember, this is free. You can be on camera. You can be right here, or you cannot be on camera. It's up to you. All right, my loves, our time together is done. If you want more of me, check out my LinkedIn, Kimberly Hess Anthropologist. I'm on TikTok, which is a lot of fun and very silly. You see the silly side of me now. You'll really see the silly side of me on TikTok. Message me. Feel free to email me at KimberlyHessAnthropologist at gmail.com. I'd love to hear what you're thinking. If you want to be coached live, let me know. I'll send you the link. I'm just here to vibe. I'm just here to raise the vibration because y'all, this world, the vibration needs significant raising of vibration, raising of joy, more happiness, less grief. Can we maybe that's what I'm going to start doing for myself, for long term taking care of myself. More happiness, less grief. I love you all, and I